Trump had characters. Like Trump, I think, literally got rid of a guy at one point early on on the administration. I think it was John Bolton because he didn't like his mustache, among other reasons. And he very much likes people with looks. And for some reason, Trump always goes with the hucksters. Like you have John Eastman, you have Roger Stone, like Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani at some point looking like a monkey suit kind of character guy. Hello, humans. Welcome to Robert Reich actually endorsed Liz Cheney for president, kind of. This is episode 47 of Power Report. I am Dan, joined with Bam here. You missed my intros. Didn't you miss my intros?
I did. That was tame. That was tame. That was a good one.
Thank you. All right. I just think that's ridiculous. Also, I'll maybe in some members portion tell people why Robert Reich has me blocked on Twitter, because that's like a pretty... That's a pretty rough one to do, but no. I wanted to have Bam on because I thought there's no better way to celebrate July 4th weekend than taking a look back on how this July 4th we almost didn't have a country. We became very, very close to having even less of a country than we have already. I know that's like really tough to even acknowledge, given our tyrannical Supreme Court, our do-nothing Democratic Congress, and the Wreck-It Ralph Republicans, so to speak. I'm just loving my alliteration this morning. Given that you have that sort of game of play in Washington, D.C., it feels like we're in, like, as I said, a malaise era with the Democratic Party. But one interesting thing that's kind of been happening under the surface are these January 6th hearings that have painted a picture of some things that we felt we were seeing in real time and were analyzed by people who were on the right-wing extremism beat. Shout out to Jared Holt, for example. And he was saying, no, this is something that's very methodically planned. And it's very likely that people very close to Trump were involved in it directly. And so I sort of knew that top of mind. I didn't really take into account the January 6th hearings that happened recently, led essentially by, I want to say like 2, maybe 3 Republicans max, like Liz Cheney and another one. But like very moderate Republicans, to say the least, and a lot of Democrats who are just like listening to top witnesses from Rudy Giuliani to Ivanka Trump to people who were in the Capitol Police, people who were right there on January 6th on kind of like all sides of it, except maybe like a riot or something like that, and giving out televised information on all of this, like all these revelations. And so we're going to kind of play by play go through some of the highlights, literally ABC News' highlights of the January 6 moments. Bam, you paid a lot closer attention to it than I did when it first came out because I thought it was just a lot of stuff I knew. But as I was trying to say earlier, there was a lot of things in here where not only is the pictures painted out so clearly that you can really understand the story of what's going on, but there's new information as well that is pretty damning, pretty shocking, and we'll ask the golden question to Bam soon. Will it matter for Trump? But we'll, I don't know, if you don't know Power Report, you don't know Power Report. Anyways, if you do know Power Report and you like Power Report, make sure you become a Syndicate 23 member at join.syndicate23.co. You can get more bonus Power Report, more bonus audio face, all the other different perks you get from supporting us. And with that, let's get into the beginning. You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
My uncle down there.
Oh, good Lord. All right. So this is going to be, we're going to be playing bits of it. We're going to be like pausing it play-by-play style. This is going to be
January 6th.
Representative Benny Thomas from Missouri.
Was the culmination of an attempted
Thompson,
coup.
Mississippi.
A brazen attempt, as one writer put it shortly after January 6th, to overthrow the government.
Those who invaded our capital and battled law enforcement for hours were motivated by what President Trump had told them, that the election was stolen and that he was the rightful president. President Trump summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack.
Liz Cheney kind of painting the picture.
Attorney General Barr also told President Trump that his allegations about Dominion voting machines were groundless.
I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations but they were made in such a sensational way that they obviously were influencing a lot of people, members of the public, that there was this systemic corruption in the system and that their votes didn't count and that these machines controlled by somebody else were actually determining it, which was complete nonsense. And it was being laid out there. And I told them that it was crazy stuff and they were wasting their time on that.
This is the president's daughter commenting on Bill Barr's statement that the department found no fraud sufficient to overturn the election.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
I definitely, yeah. God, that was there's a lot to unpack there. So you have Ivanka Trump in not really 4K, it's like a 480p right there. They definitely could have upped the camera quality with some of these guys. But I mean, look at us. Look at what we're doing for the people versus what Ivanka Trump was able to schlep together. But there was a lot from there. What were your thoughts?
Well, like I was watching that first day, and I mean, I think I put it in the group chat. I was like, wow, like, I mean, you see Bill Barr, and we already know that he had come out and said that he didn't believe it. But when you saw Ivanka within like the first 5 minutes, I was like, whoa, like this is really real. And it made me want to definitely pay attention more. Because I was like, if they're dropping this on the first night and this is the prime time and they have so many more to come, like it's going to be wild.
Yeah, I was really kind of skeptical, kind of going into it that, okay, we had 2 Mueller-style investigation, impeachment-style things. Well, there's one Mueller investigation, but like there are 2 impeachment-style hearings. Democrats tried to make a big deal out of it. It turned out into nothing because he's a Teflon Don, so to speak, right? But this is a different context. This is a different game of chess, so to speak, where Donald Trump is not the president, but he's gaining some sort of, continuing to fester his legitimacy among the Republican Party. He very much is the king of the Republican Party, so to speak. And even though it's Joe Brandon's America, you have people who are kind of on the fence about it. Republicans are coming up against a midterm election where I think the few moderates that are there might be seeing this. Something that, by the way, the more lunatic Republicans who are elected didn't get to react to play by play because they weren't part of the hearings. They weren't part of the investigations directly as a choice that was made, which I think was a good choice of Democrats playing smart politics and saying, listen, we have Liz Cheney, we have some other Republicans who are closer to us. That's going to try to legitimize this a little bit because there are very few legitimate Republicans left. It's honestly a messaging strategy from the Democrats that I wish I saw more.
Yeah, I mean, well, just going back to what we saw in this first few minutes of the hearing from that day, I remember, when it was like election season 2020, Trump was saying that the elections are going to be rigged if he lost in April of 2020. So for me, I was like, okay, well, this guy is already saying that if he loses, they cheated. And I wonder what that's going to mean. And I also remember Michael Cohen saying that if Trump loses, he won't leave power. Now, I remember when we talked about that on Power Report, I was like, I hope that Michael Cohen said that so Trump can't do it now. He doesn't want to prove Michael Cohen right. But that definitely was not the case. Michael Cohen was right. Trump tried to not leave power. But yeah, the whole election is going to be rigged. Things started, 8 months, 6 months or something, whatever, before the election.
Yeah, that's such a fair point because he was saying it's rigged if I don't win. It's like I'm going to win, and if I don't win, it's rigged. That was exactly the messaging from the beginning. And a lot of people throughout the administration, the Trump administration especially, I hate to overuse this word, which is why I don't, but people were gaslit. They were being told that No, what is happening right now is very normal. What you see right now is just a protest. Liberals have protests all the time in Washington, D.C. What are you talking about? Oh, some Capitol Police members fell out. They were just flopping like LeBron James. Don't worry about it. It's just they were they were pulling all of the stops out. Oh, even though they had Blue Lives Matter flags, they were assaulting police officers. Don't worry about it. This was telegraphed to people who were saying, look, Donald Trump is trying to orchestrate one of the lazier coups in American history. But there's so many people who are willing to fall in line with him in the Republican Party that it's only a miracle that Trump hadn't filtered his way through all of the semi-loyalists to the country, or people who are just like, yo, I just want like a stable place where I can just have paved roads and not have to actually defend my family with weapons. I want to like live in my mansion and have my gated community and stuff too, right? I want us to be able to relax. I need a country, a stable country to do that. They're able to at least think about that before Trump. I want to go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, at some point we're going to talk about our criticisms of this hearing. So I don't think we're going to do it now, but I just wanted to remember it.
You can talk about it whenever you want to, but I think we can start it maybe a little bit after we play.
Yeah. Because there was something that I was hoping to see on that first day that was kept out. Well, okay, I was hoping to see it on the first day, and I was hoping to see it when that the woman Capitol police officer talked, which I can't remember which day that was. But maybe we'll talk about that then, because I do got something for these people.
All right, I'm excited for that.
They think that we forgot. They think we forgot, but we didn't. We remember.
All right, watch what happens. Let's play the rest of this, or some more of this at least.
We need backup.
That's a police officer from Capitol Police saying we need backup. He's reading out a Trump tweet.
President Trump gave no order to deploy the National Guard.
Liz Cheney again.
And he made no effort to work with the Department of Justice to coordinate and deploy law enforcement assets. But Vice President Pence did each of those things. For example, here is what General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified to this committee.
There were 2 or 3 calls from Vice President Pence. He was very animated, and he issued very explicit, very direct, unambiguous orders. He was very animated, very direct, very firm, and to Secretary Miller. Get the military down here, get the Guard down here, put down this situation, etc.
So I wanted to pause there just to like clarify for the audience. So what you're seeing there is the like head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Trump appointee essentially, who was saying that, okay, when I was talking to Pence that day, he was like, listen, this is a 5-alarm fire, essentially. Get military down there, get National Guard down there, get Capitol Police down there. We need to control the situation. This is getting dangerous and a half. Remember, they're counting the votes that day to certify the election for president of the United States that Trump has basically claimed is rigged, right? And so this is what Pence responded to. Now we're going to play how Trump responded to it, which I think is just telling.
By contrast, here is General Milley's description of his conversation with President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, on January 6th.
He said, we have to kill the narrative that the vice president is making all the decisions. We need to establish the narrative that that the president is still in charge, and that
we need to assert dominance.
Steady or stable or what's that thing. I immediately interpret that as politics. Red flag for me personally, no action.
Meanwhile, at the Capitol here,
when I fell behind,
they're pushing through the gates,
line, and
they have a Capitol Police officer testifying who fell.
I can just remember my breath catching in my throat because what I saw was just a war scene. It was something like I had seen out of the movies. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were officers on the ground, you know, they were bleeding, they were throwing up, they were, you know, they had, I mean, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood. You know, I was catching people as they fell. It was carnage.
We take our oath to defend the United States Constitution, and that oath must mean something. Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain.
Ooh, your dishonor will remain.
Let's hope so, Liz.
Yeah, their dishonor will exist for like a quarter of a news cycle max.
Yeah, let's hope Trump will be gone one day.
Right? Joe Brandon got rid of Trump, all right? So Orange Man gone. So let's get into some of your criticisms of the first day, especially what they didn't mention, because I'm definitely excited to hear about that. And you can also like filter that into your criticisms overall, because your boy been talking a lot.
Okay, we watched the Capitol riots. I remember hearing about it. Like I saw it on Twitter. I was like, I'm going to turn on the news.
Our group texting about it that day. We were freaking out.
Like, we gotta I have to turn on MSNBC for like the first time in like years. And there were things that we saw that day, but things that we didn't see were coming out in the days after. One of the biggest things that came out in the days after were there were Capitol police officers taking selfies with those rioters and showing support for those rioters in some ways. That was before things got very violent, but there were definitely more than a couple Capitol police officers who were being like extra friendly to those people. And it wasn't like they're just being friendly to the public. They're being like, when you're being friendly to those types, like you're being friendly to the cause, in my opinion. Like they know like who these people are, you know?
The cause of Stop the Steal, Trump should be president forever, and everything that stands for, which is, you know, right-wing extremism, QAnon, embracing those conspiracies. I mean, like for material conditions, it's continuing to entrench the wealthy in this country. But in reality, it's just demonizing anyone who is not a straight white male. Then there are people who say, oh no, Trump was great for gay people. Everything was, I love how I just fall into a Dave Rubin for that. But just look at the past couple of years of what the Trump-esque people have done. Florida, for example, and DeSantis using that as like a blueprint for how he wants to run the country. You'll see that the Republicans have come for the T in LGBTQ plus, and honestly the Q plus, and they're going to come for the G next, as soon as they stop enjoying themselves to the L and questioning themselves with the B. So I got my Subway order messed up recently, so I had to pull one. Anyways, too soon.
But yeah, like I feel like that aspect has been ignored. I don't know if something's going to come up later, but you know, it also shows the power and the influence of the police, because they're not wanting to say anything about that. Like that's just forgotten. And that's like the PR power of the police as a whole. And obviously like those police officers went through a lot that day and it was terrible, but like who were those guys? You know, when that officer was talking about being in people's blood or whatever, like who was she talking about those guys too? Did those guys end up getting out of the way? Like, you know, we don't know. And I would like to know. And maybe there's been some information about that I haven't seen, but I have not seen that aspect being brought up, that there were Capitol police officers who were very friendly to those rioters.
I mean, also, the fact that like there's that one woman who was shot essentially because she basically got all the way in almost to the chambers. But the fact that they were let in and they like really did storm the Capitol. Yeah, they were like outnumbered, etc. But like any other situation, there's tear gas. They're gonna get like thrown like just months earlier, even not even a year earlier, Trump was talking about shooting down looters and rioters, which was code for like Black Lives Matter protesters, which were largely peaceful.
Yeah, and we're peaceful in DC. Yeah, and that woman wasn't shot by Capitol Police. She was shot by some Secret Service person or something like that. We like really the rioters got very little injuries. They were beating the shit out of the cops. But also there was, you know, I don't know how true this is, but there was like some police officer that in the days after committed suicide. I feel like I remember they were saying he was some kind of QAnon supporter. And I was like, okay, you know, there had to be somebody who was like, I mean, this is the police, you know, there are some right-wing extremists in that crowd. Like, was there anybody that knew was like, you know, you're going to have an investigation into like these politicians before you have an investigation into a whole police department that like actually matters. The police have outsized influence. But ultimately, you know, I understand why they didn't really bring it up. Maybe this isn't really the place for that, because we're talking more about like the people that, you know, organize this whole thing and the people that are responsible for like the whole situation. But it would have been nice just to be like, you know, there were some people there that were being friendly, because like that was a big deal to me. And I think in the days after January 6th, there was a lot of people talking about that, those police officers taking selfies and being supportive of those rioters.
I don't remember exactly if there were, I think, a number of cops who took their own lives. I know QAnon, you tried to make conspiracy theories out of that, like, oh, they were offed like Clinton style by the government or whatever. But like, these are just some of the most ridiculous people.
No.
I swear to you, that's what I was able to look up just in this like past moment. So I don't know if that was like factually accurate, but at least they tried to make up QAnon conspiracies, which I am pretty certain were not accurate. But I think like the whole layering in, oh, by the way, they've infiltrated the cops thing. To be fair, there are going to be more hearings, but I wouldn't be surprised they don't touch that. This is like a lot of sauce here. They're trying to appeal to moderates. They don't want to sound too much like the defund the police, even though the police have not been defunded almost at all in like any place whatsoever, kind of people. They want to seem like very pro-cop in this because I think that'll give them an angle, blah, blah, moderate Democrats. And also there are Republicans on this like committee, so it's not going to be that woke, honestly.
I do think ultimately it's more strategic to not do that ultimately, but for me, I'd like to see it.
Oh yeah, totally. Day 2, shall we do that?
Let's do it.
All right.
Also, was that woman, the cop she was from day one?
Yeah.
Really?
Apparently, like at least in this highlight or whatever. But
okay, because I feel like she was way later, but I don't know.
I also, my last thing I remember on that I wanted to mention is I remember during the initial January 6th like hearings when they tried to have them very quickly on to keep the momentum going, which again, Democrats fumbled the ball there. But I remember how they tried to put up a black Capitol police officer who had the N-word shouted at him a bunch of times. And he was like, never in my life as a Capitol police officer had I been treated like that. And no wonder that was a blip off the radar, because you're trying to appeal to moderate conservatives with a black person feeling racism. That's not going to work. A white woman like feeling like she's drowning in a pool of her own blood. No, that's going to resonate.
Oh yeah, get that blonde light. Hopefully she dyed her hair blonde for the hearing. Like that. Hopefully they told her, listen, sweetheart, dye your hair blonde for this hearing. I remember the black guy. I think that was on like 60 Minutes or something like that, right? Or PBS. I can't remember.
No, it was a full-on like testimony too.
Was it? Okay, I don't remember that. But yeah, I remember that too when he was talking about that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, who's gonna care about that?
Of course. All right, day 2.
After the president tweeted at me by
This is
name,
Al Schmidt. This is going to be
calling
talking
me out
about
the way that he
city-level voter fraud.
the threats became much more specific, much more graphic, and included not just me by name.
So I just want to like pause here and read some of the messages, especially for the podcast audience. These talking about anonymous messages that he got after being singled out by Trump. One's a text, well, an email actually. It says, "You lied, you're a traitor. Perhaps 75 cuts and 20 bullets will soon arrive. Rig AF." Mentions family members' names. Rhino stole the election. We steal lives. Q, you betrayed our country. Another one's an email that says, spouse, so to her, his spouse, saying, spouse's name, Rhino Schmidt, your husband should tell the truth or your phone number of kids and their names, and including their ages, including the spouse's name again. And then another family member's name will be fatally shot in blank. Cops can't help you. #Q. Heads on spikes. Treasonous Schmitz.
Okay, I just got to say this real fast too. Like the QAnon stuff was hilarious. Like you're signing off with Q, buddy. If Q was real, why didn't Q do anything? Like there's supposed to be some insider. Like you got to go shoot this person's family. You got to go storm the Capitol. You're telling me you believe that Q is some insider in there. How come they can't do nothing? You got to do it all yourself. So dumb.
These are keyboard warriors. They exist in all contexts.
Really
so,
stupid.
Anyways,
by name, their ages, our address, pictures of our home, just every bit of detail that you could imagine. That was what changed with that tweet.
I will say the context of that, just for the audience, is that what they're trying to do, especially in this day, is paint a picture of how Trump's interactions with stoking ideas that the election was falsified essentially made it a lot more difficult for regular election officials to just like live their lives, not out of fear, because the president has this ability to commit stochastic terrorism. I don't think they use this phrase, but I think we need to define it and talk about it often, because right-wingers will talk about the most bigoted things imaginable, but then kind of come back at you and say, oh no, I just said words, I just had opinions. You can't say that I incited violence. I didn't tell someone to actually go and kill them. I just said that these people are coming to kill you and you should defend yourselves. I am not responsible for this. This is the line Ben Shapiro's played before. This is a line a lot of other right-wingers have played before in the wake of mass killers who have manifestos that end up mentioning these right-wingers by name. Tucker Carlson, same idea.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, so they take their marching orders, so to speak, from Trump because he taught everyone that they let you do it, essentially. Also, for consecutive days, we'll go through a little bit quicker than this because we're already like coming through this a lot, and they're only on day 2. But there's a lot of context to lay out here.
Right out of the box on election night, the president claimed that there was major fraud.
This is Bill Barr speaking.
Happened, as far as I could tell, before there was actually any potential of looking at evidence. And it seemed to be based on the dynamic that at the end of the evening, a lot of Democratic votes came in, which changed the vote counts in certain states. And that seemed to be the basis for this broad claim that there was major fraud. And I didn't think much of that because people had been talking for weeks and everyone understood for weeks that that was going to be what happened on election night.
I didn't mind being categorized. There were 2 groups of family. We called them kind of my team and Rudy's team. I didn't mind.
This is Bill Stepping speaking. He's a former Trump campaign manager, and he's going to talk about the dichotomy between Team Normal versus Team Crazy.
Mind being characterized as being part of Team Normal, as reporters, kind of started to do around that point in time. I said, hours ago, early on that, I've been doing this for a long time, 25 years, and I've spanned, political ideologies from Trump to McCain to Bush, to Christie, and
so he spanned political ideologies, like all of the right wing, like extreme, like neoconservatives of the past 20 years. Cool. How varied. How what a range. Don't you love these kind of people in politics who, just try to meet in the middle, come on all sides here? Pause.
Yeah. No, it's funny because you hear these people talking too, and I'm like, it's just funny because I'm like, my politics don't align with this person. I think Bill Barr is like one of the worst people on earth, and just to hear someone like Bill Barr, I don't know who the hell this guy is, but someone like Bill Barr, who's been
his former campaign manager.
Yeah, but like nobody knows him.
Yeah,
Bill Barr is infamous. He's been a piece of shit since the 90s. Like the fact that he's not on Team Crazy is like, that means it's really out of this world. Like what Trump and them were doing wasn't just like it was a step too far for your neocon who thinks it's okay to like flatten Afghanistan. Like, yo, it's really wild out here.
It's like having a bank heist, but Newt Gingrich goes, "Hey, wait a moment. I think this is going a little bit too far here." It's really that kind of situation.
Like, don't hold babies hostage. Like, get an adult.
Jesus Christ! All right.
I can work under a lot of circumstances for a lot of varied, candidates and politicians, but situation where, and I think along the way I've built up a pretty good, I hope, a good reputation for being honest and professional. And I didn't think what was happening was necessarily honest or professional at that point in time. So that led to me stepping away.
The president did get rid of Team Normal, and I'd like to play a clip.
Representative Zoe Lofgren, Democrat.
He needed to perpetuate his claims of fraud.
You gave me the paper ballots. I could probably turn around
Rudolph Giuliani,
each one of these states. I'm absolutely convinced if you let me examine each one of those ballots, I'd pull out enough that were fraudulent that it would shake the hell out of the country.
What they were proposing.
Oh, this guy's hilarious.
Nuts.
Eric Hirschman, former White House attorney.
Completely nuts. Right? There's a combination of Italians, Germans. Different things have been floating around as to who was involved. I remember Hugo Chavez and the Venezuelan. She has an affidavit from somebody who says they wrote a software in and something with the Philippines, and just all over the radar.
Barr again told the president that there was nothing to these claims on December 14th.
When I walked in, sat down, he went off on a monologue saying that there was now definitive evidence involving fraud through the Dominion machines. And a report had been prepared by a very reputable cybersecurity firm, which he identified as Allied Security Operations Group. And he held up the report, and he had a...
Yeah, I know Allied Security. I see him outside the 99-cent store all the time.
And he's like holding something up. There's nothing on there.
we have we have all the latest papers from Securitas over here.
Like, literally, this is McDonald's order on their paper.
And then he asked that a copy of it be made for me. And while a copy was being made, he said, this is absolute proof that the Dominion machines were rigged. The report means that I'm going to have a second term. And then he gave me a copy of the report. And as he talked more and more about it, I sat there flipping through the report and looking through it. And to be frank, it looked very amateurish to me. Didn't have the credentials of the people involved, but I didn't see any real qualifications. And the statements were made very conclusory, like, these machines were designed to, engage in fraud or something to that effect, but I didn't see any supporting information for it. And I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality if he really believes this stuff. On the other hand, when I went into this and would, tell him how crazy some of these allegations were, there was never an indication of interest in what the actual facts were.
And I think that that's the key. Like, you are just sitting back, like, you're wondering, like, it's so ridiculous what Trump and them are trying to claim. Do they believe it? Or are they like decent actors? Like, we have to really act like we believe it. It's the big lie. It's like, maybe if we say it enough, if we are saying it with enough conviction, we can get others to believe it. And obviously that's what happened with a lot of like the normal Republicans.
That was just the way the Trump administration worked as a campaign. And then when they were dumbfounded enough to get elected, they're just like, okay, let's just keep doing this. And they realized that there's an entire party apparatus, unlike the Democratic Party that would start to, like, during the Obama administration, you had MSNBC and a lot of like that type of media just follow the party line. But then you had a rising online media that was calling Obama's bluff. Like, that just kind of stuff just like wouldn't happen very easily on the right wing. Like, Donald Trump found that there was a blanket of liars willing to kind of like crowd surf him along with whatever like bullshit he was spinning in any given day, right? But that kind of thing just like wouldn't happen on the Democratic side, I don't think.
No. I mean, you have like, amongst the public who would vote for the center left, like, you have too many people with brains. You have people that are voting Republican that would actually look at Rudy Giuliani and believe something he's saying or care. And like Rudy Giuliani, I'm just like, I feel like he's completely senile. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but like Trump and this Eastman guy, he seems like a true ideologue. Someone who really wants to have the dictatorship. And I don't think he believed it. He was just like, no, we're trying to do this. But Trump and maybe whoever else was around him, maybe Meadows, it doesn't even seem like Meadows really believed it either. He was just along for the ride. But I guess it boils down to Trump. Like, did Trump really believe it? Or like, is he that dumb? Did he convince himself? Like, it's just hard to know. Like, what's going on here? Is he saying like, no, I'm trying to be the dictator for life and like, this is what I got to push? But you're seeing like he's in private, having these conversations. Like, I guess he's trying to convince Bill Barr. Yeah, who knows? It's hard to know from that perspective, I guess.
I think, to your point, there's two sort of factions within the Republican Party during the Trump administration. I think partially today, right? There's the part that we were just kind of joking about. That's just like we'll do it live. Like, kind of just, we're just going to take whatever lie we can get away with and get away with it as long as we can to see what happens out of that. But then I think you also have the enablers, people like Bill Barr or a number of others who are telling lovely stories right now when the stakes are a lot lower, when they're under oath, when there's a potential angle where they could be seen as national heroes finally, because the political, like I said, like Joe Brandon's president for the time being right now, and the political atmosphere around anti-Trump things is probably at its safest it's going to get until the next 2 years, the Republicans start to sweep and take over again and lay the groundwork for a potential Republican victory in 2024. But through that, you have this like lane of Republican enablers who are now singing like Usher right now. But they were originally going, okay, we know this is a lie. We know this is not true or based on flimsy evidence, and Trump's living in a fantasy world. This is so weird. This is so not normal. We're going to do nothing. We're not going to raise the alarm bells as it's happening because we fear losing our jobs. We fear there's the argument that, someone with fewer morals would have come in. And I think in later days in the hearings, that's going to come up shortly, you see where people are afraid that, okay, well, if I resign, Trump has literally said, Many people are saying that I should let you go. Many people are saying that we're just saying like he's just floating around the idea. We know this about Trump. Many people are saying is translation for, well, what if I did this? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe the argument is that they thought that, oh, well, at least I should stay here because I know I have some level of morals. And if I don't, then a worse ghoul will be in my place who maybe won't have these kind of morality or this level of ability of restraint, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you still didn't do everything you could have. Like enough of these people banding together who are apparently talking to each other going, damn, this brazy, right? Like they were talking to each other this whole time. They didn't think they could like form a group or something like that. And, I don't know if a New York Times op-ed would have done it, but like some other way to publicize this, get Congress involved sooner. This seems like the hearings are the least you could do at this point because the stakes are both higher because you're under oath, but lower because you're so insulated from the moment right now when the moment could have been really bad.
Well, you know what else? The stakes are lower, and it's going to sound funny, but Trump doesn't have Twitter. Because if those people betrayed, like I would imagine those people were scared to like betray Trump at that point because he's going to dog them on Twitter. And like Trump built a cult around him. Like, and I'm not going to get into my theories about where QAnon came from, but like that was a loyal, rabid base, and Trump's influence was, insane at that time. So those people were cowards in that sense. Like, oh, if I do anything or say anything now, like Trump's gonna destroy me, and I'm like never gonna be able. Like, who knows what's gonna happen to me? But at least I'm gonna get dogged on social media, and I don't want that.
Yeah, very true. Day 3. Let us begin.
The Constitution says that the Vice President of the United States oversees the process of counting the electoral.
Democrat Benny Thompson from Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Mississippi. Chairman of the committee again.
College votes. The former president wanted Pence to reject the votes and either declare Trump the winner or send the votes back to the states to be counted again.
And Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
Like that's the shit. He was just doing the speeches about it right there.
That declaration of Donald Trump as the next president would have plunged America into what I believe would have been tantamount to a revolution within a constitutional crisis.
Can you pause it real fast? That I was watching that day when this guy right here was on. Oh my goodness. Like, they needed to play it at 1.5 because it was like that slow, what you're hearing. There was like 45 minutes of that, and it was really, really hard, man. Like, I know that there were people that were watching that hearing who was like, okay, I'm done with the whole thing after this, because that dude was rough. He did have like a couple cool moments, but it was just, he paused so much after each like 3 words. It was really difficult. Anybody who watched that, that was a hard one. I don't know his name either. I think he's a judge.
Yeah, the Honorable Lutig, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I was very contemplating much like, as an editor, should I just like edit? Should I just cut out the pauses? That's what I would do, just as like in post-production, because this is just nuts here.
Oh no, it was a long time of that too. It was tough. Me and Caesar were like talking about it. It was hilarious.
All right, well, let's go into more.
Would have been tantamount to a revolution within a constitutional crisis in America.
I'm on Google.
Critically,
and
no vice president.
Yeah, he's a retired judge. And the third result that comes up in Google for him is slow speech. Which is just like, why you gonna do dude like that, man? Like, that's just rude.
No, it was rough, yo.
Okay.
In 230 years of history, had ever claimed to have that kind of authority, hadn't claimed authority to reject electoral votes, had not claimed authority to return electoral votes back to the states.
There's another legal
the entire
person.
history of the United States, not
Mr. Jacob.
once had a joint session, ever returned electoral votes back to the states to be counted.
So, this is all unprecedented.
Given the questionable constitutionality.
This is Giuliani at a build-up to the Jan 6 rally.
With John Eastman.
1887. That the
Save
vice
America
president
underneath.
Can cast it aside, and he can do what a president called Jefferson did when he was vice president. He can decide on the validity of these crooked ballots.
And all we are demanding of Vice President
This goofy ass hat.
is this afternoon at 1 o'clock, he let the legislatures of the state look into this so we get to the bottom of it and the American people know whether we have control of the direction of our government.
Now that's caught in 4K.
Even Dr. Eastman knew his theory didn't hold water. Mr. Jacob, you discussed
Representative
and
Pete
even
Aguilar of
debated this theory
California?
at length with Dr. Eastman. Did Dr. Eastman ever tell you what he thought the U.S. Supreme Court would do if it had to decide this issue?
We had an extended discussion, an hour and a half to 2 hours on January 5th. And when I pressed him on the point, I said, John, if the vice president did what you were asking him to do, we would lose 9-0 in the Supreme Court, wouldn't we? And he initially started it, well, I think maybe you would lose only 7-2. And after some further discussion, acknowledged, well, yeah, you're right, we would lose 9-0.
What would have happened to our democracy
He's
if
reasonable.
President Pence had gone along with this plan and certified Donald Trump as the winner of the 2020 election?
A constitutional jump ball situation, political chaos in Washington, lawsuits, and who knows what happening in the streets. And you would have had the Vice President of the United States having declared that the outcomes of these state elections were incorrect. So for all of those reasons, there would have been significant short-term consequences. But in the long term, we would have established a situation where a vice president would have asserted that one person could have the authority to determine the outcome of an election, which is antithetical to everything in our democracy. It's antithetical to the rule of law. And so it would have been significant impacts, both in the short and the long term.
It was funny too because there were this Jacob guy. He mentioned when he talked to Eastman, he was being. I mean, it's funny. You think about these politicians and like how they may talk to each other, but he's saying an argument that like anybody would make. He's saying like, okay, would you want Al Gore or Kamala Harris to be able to decide the election? No. Okay, then. Like, like this guy said that to John Eastman. He's like, okay, so you're not making some kind of logical thing here. You're just saying what you want to happen with your dumbass hat.
And this is Greg Jacob is the former chief counsel to Mike Pence, by the way. And Trump had characters. Like Trump, I think, literally got rid of a guy at one point on the administration. I think it was John Bolton because he didn't like his mustache, among other reasons. And he very much likes people with looks. And for some reason, Trump always goes with the hucksters. Like you have John Eastman, you have Roger Stone. Like Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani at some point looking like a monkey suit kind of character guy.
John Eastman, a Chapman professor, by the way.
Oh my God. I totally remember reading about that. I didn't put two and two together, but yeah, that is I know a lot of people at Chapman personally who are like not okay with that. So respect on Chapman's name, but Jesus, wow. So yeah, that was definitely one of the drier days, and I don't know, even just watching the highlight views, like on the internet, it seemed like up until you got to day 6, honestly, and we're about to go through day 4 really quickly, you get a lot of the really juicy stuff. But I think in day 4, you get a lot more of the stochastic terrorism angle, the aspect of, I guess, where, earlier on, Bam, you were like, oh, I wish that they connected more to the police. And I was like, no, they're not going to go that abstract. I think this is the most abstract that they go, where they're talking about, they're getting Republican state officials who are talking about how they were heavily pressured to make up some type of voter situation where they try to, again, like a lot of the people earlier, prove logically in every case possible, okay, I will take your point to the most logical extreme that I can and prove to you that it's BS here. But I think this is important because the Supreme Court is going to be seeing next year a case that, if the Republican Supreme Court decides, as it always has in Republican electoral decisions this century, to side with giving Republicans more electoral power, this will mean that states can essentially overrule elections more or less. Like to be more specific, it'll give states like more power to, not like states have the right to control their elections, but there's still some federal overwatching the proceedings of that. But it would basically give state electors almost the power to overturn elections, like as you were supposed to act it out, which is bad because you have a lot of Republican legislatures that are
anti-democracy,
and they're taking over on the state level. I've been talking for the past 2 years about how local politics and state politics is where people on the left need to pay the most attention to, because it's where you can still have a little bit of a chance in fighting back. That window is now closing. And when that window is closing, we need to talk about like refugee situations for people in the United States, because it is going to be a very, very rough country for the next 20, 30 years minimum. And that's assuming there's no war.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be all like accelerationist on this, but yeah.
Too late. No, I'm joking.
I'm not an accelerationist, I'm a realist. Anyways, let's go through day 4, which starts with the Republican of Arizona Speaker of the House. And this is going to be important because this is what the Supreme Court is going to be looking at soon.
There was no evidence being presented of any strength. Evidence can be hearsay evidence. It's still evidence, but it's still hearsay. But strong judicial quality evidence, anything that would say to me, you have a doubt, deny your oath. I will not do that.
So Mr. Giuliani was claiming in the call that there were hundreds of thousands of undocumented people and thousands of dead people who had purportedly voted in the election?
Yes.
And you asked him for evidence of that?
I did.
And did you ever receive from him that evidence either during the call, after the call, or to this day?
Never.
Mr. Secretary, is there any way that you could have lawfully changed the result in the state of Georgia and somehow explained it away as a recalculation?
No, the numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations and we investigated every single one of them. In fact, I challenged my team, did we miss anything? They said that there was over 66,000 underage voters. We found that there was actually 0. You can register to vote in Georgia. When you're 17 and a half, you have to be 18 by election day. We checked that out, every single voter. They said that there was 2,423 non-registered voters. There was 0. They said that there was 2,056 felons. We identified less than 74 or less that were actually still in felony sentence. Every single allegation we checked, we ran down the rabbit trail to make sure that our numbers were accurate.
I have characterized at one point it was kind of like a shovel trying to empty the ocean.
So this is Gabriel Sterling. He is the Georgia Deputy Secretary of State. And keep in mind, the current Brian Kemp, I believe is his name, the current governor of Georgia, He used to be the Secretary of State, and during the Stacey Abrams race, that was a point of controversy right there. But really quickly, I just want to like correct the record and kind of like get in what I was saying there. So like the reason why all this state stuff is going to be important is because what the case the Supreme Court is looking at is basically going to, depending on how the Supreme Court rules, and the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of keeping Republicans in legislative power for the past 20 years plus, it would claim that the Constitution gives state legislatures unilateral control on how elections for Congress and the president are run, without any limits from individual states' constitutions or state courts. So states would still have the power to control elections, but only one branch of state government would be able to do that. The legislative branch, which is usually the one you can most quickly fill in with radicals if you just flood the state legislatures with cash. In states like California, that's a little bit harder to do. In many of the other states, and there are more numerous of them, and numbers matter in this game here, that's a lot easier to do.
Yeah, they gerrymander the hell out of these states, and they get like North Carolina, Wisconsin, like all these places will have a Republican legislature with a Democratic governor. Like it happens all the time.
Yeah, and we see how, exactly with the gerrymandering, you will get situations with states or like districts where clearly these are packed to be Republican votes, or these are sectioned off so that all the Democrats get packed into one district and Republicans get 4. And Democrats do a lot of gerrymandering as well. Honestly, like I am at the point where I hate both parties. So if both parties play both the same dirty games against each other and escalate it, whatever. I'm going to figure out whichever one goes for my interests more of the time and pressure that party. And generally, it's one party that wants to kill people who look like Bam and I, or at least endorse those people. So I'm less privy to them. Anyways, let's hear more from Gabriel Sterling, the Georgia Deputy Secretary of State, on the pressure tactics used by the Trump administration and all the things they tried to claim were happening that were simply not true.
It was frustrating. I even have, family members who I had to argue with about some of these things, and I would show them things, and the problem you have is you're getting to people's hearts. I remember there's one specific, an attorney that we know that we showed and walked him through. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't 5 or 6 things. But at the end, he goes, I just know in my heart they cheated.
I understand that taking the courageous positions that you did following the 2020 election in defense of the rule of law and protecting the voters of Arizona resulted in you and your family being subjected to protests and terrible threats.
As again, Schiff asking about how the voting officials got personal threats to themselves and their family.
It is the new pattern,
this is the guy from Arizona,
in our lives to worry what will happen
Republican.
on Saturdays, because we have various groups come by and they have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician.
Ms. Moss, I understand that.
And he's straight.
Showed up at your grandmother's house. Tell us about that experience.
I received a call from my grandmother screaming at the top of her lungs, like, Shay,
Shay Moss,
Shay,
an election worker.
freaking me out, saying that there were people at her home and they, they knocked on the door, and of course she opened it, seeing who was there, who it was, and they just started pushing their way through, claiming that they were coming in to make a citizen's arrest.
After the election, my email, my cell phone was doxxed, and so I was getting texts all over the country, and then eventually my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. You have to understand that Trish and I, we met in high school, and we've been married over 40 years now. And so they started going after her, I think, just to probably put pressure on me. Why don't you just quit, walk away?
Mr. Secretary.
So, again, this is an aspect of stochastic terrorism where they are they know that they've upped the stakes so much. Their base thinks that they are, by threatening the lives of this person and their families, they are defending the country. They are protecting the country. They are not like they're saving the country from tyranny by making sure their president, who got the fewer number of votes than Joe Biden did, who was saying how he was going to steal the election if he lost and was just playing out that playbook already. All of that rhetoric led to, I mean, this is an election worker. Some of these other elected officials, like I believe in certain like more intense forms of protest, and I think a lot of more people will get into, right? But yeah, I'll like keep myself. I'll keep myself on the camera here for that, right? But I still think that you punch up when it comes to power, right? There was that election worker named Shay who had her mom had to was pushed at her own home by people looking for this election worker, thinking that she had something to do with stealing the election in Georgia. Like, this is a whole new level. This is our worst fears, honestly. Especially the contextualize of a black woman in Georgia and like white people, presumably. I don't think this was people of color, honestly, but like white people coming after this woman over a tyrannical act of trying to force an election result. I mean, like Bam, what do you think about hearing that?
Well, I mean, that one was very moving. It was so sad to hear. Like, I mean, you know, I'm somebody who pays attention to history a lot, and just that what someone like her or our ancestors had to do to be able to participate in our flawed democracy, to have this woman be someone who's, you know, actively working for the flawed democracy, and to be lied about and demonized to the point where people want to kill her and her family members. And also, I think on that day they did show footage of those people in Arizona who were trying to break into. I can't remember exactly what building it was in Arizona. I don't know if it was like the Capitol building or not there, but you know, the messaging was so crazy. They're like saying, stop the count in one place and saying keep counting in another place. But you know,
I remember that. It was so funny when they were still counting election results. It's like,
yeah,
you
like
don't
Michigan,
get to do
counting. Arizona, stop counting. Like
you can't say they're stealing over here and then sort of suppressing the vote over here. It just seems like sore ass losing, which is exactly what it was.
Yeah. But there were a lot of people with weapons out there in Arizona. Yeah. Alex Jones showed up there in Arizona. It was a big deal. Luckily, I mean, and they did end up doing
he hitchhiked because money's a little bit tight there over at InfoWars.
They did end up doing some kind of recount or whatever there in Arizona and found nothing. But you look at somebody like Rusty Bowers, who is a complete right winger.
The Arizona election official.
Yeah. And you kind of like, you know, you want to understand his mindset. Like, you know, it could be easier for him to just fall in line with whatever Trump and them are doing. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to steal it. Like, whatever, let's do it. You know, it'll work out for me. It'll work out for people like me. Let's do it. And, you know, he's talking about his oath that he took and makes him seem like an upstanding person with a lot of integrity. But there's a part of me that, like, you know, is he really like that? Probably not. I'm sure he has some of it in there, but like, he's probably also thinking like, okay, if I do this, we're going into full dictatorship mode. And in dictatorships, the people around the dictator don't last. Like you're his right hand man one day, and then like you're getting in a firing squad the next. So like what we have here, although it is a flawed democracy from top to bottom, and it could get worse. it's still better than a place where just this guy makes all the decisions. Like, it won't take much for you. Like, I would imagine Rusty Bowers and other people thought about it. Like, yeah, like that sounds cool, but like, I'm going to run afoul of this guy one day and they're going to kill me. So let's just keep what we got and, get it cracking that way. Because I'm sure this guy would love to have like, Dan, what you were talking about, how the states are going to be able to do so much to make the democracy even worse when it comes to state elections. I'm sure he'd love that. But putting Trump in power for life situation, he's like, no, we're not doing that, though.
Or again, like, this is a convenient moment for him to come out like this. I'm really interested to see what happens to any of these officials who are potentially elected, because for every state it varies and it differs. But if these are the types of seats that can be elected, or you can be reelected for this. Oh, this testimony is going to be in one of the few, like, state judicial campaign ads you ever see, because Republicans in that state will pump money into making sure that they replace it with electors who, will do the right thing, so to speak, which is lie and cheat to make sure the Republican gets elected. And the next time presidential election goes to the Supreme Court, which it's going to very often, because you're often going to have a split between, like we had in 2000, where you have a popular vote split versus an electoral college split. You'll have some situation, they'll try to kick it to the Supreme Court, or they'll try to get, even before then, go to the state courts, or the state legislatures, who, because the Supreme Court will be able to unilaterally, without any checks or balances, be able to rule how elections function. They will fix it for Republicans, because if they rule how elections function, that means fewer voting locations, no vote by mail, anything that makes voting more accessible. They're going to make voting a 2-hour window that you can only do between 11 and 1 p.m. So if you can't get, I'm getting there. And they're going to do it on the outskirts of town. So if you don't have a car and the ability to get 2 hours of work off, you won't be able to vote. They're going to do all these other different things. They're going to have a voter ID, gun IDs will count, student IDs won't. They're going to do every single step of the measure here to suppress the vote for anyone they think might be a Democrat, and increase the vote who might be a conservative. It's electoral gerrymandering is what they're about to do.
Let's hope it doesn't happen. That was pretty detailed. It sounded like you might be in on it. I don't know.
The rest is just like, nonsense about like, I had to be faithful to the Constitution, whatever. Let's get into day 5. It's a little bit shorter. Then day 6 is juicy, and then we'll kind of talk about, the rest of that stuff.
Yeah.
Presidential pressure can be really hard to resist. Today, we'll focus on a few officials who stood firm against President Trump's political pressure campaign. When the president tried to misuse the department and install a loyalist at its helm, these brave officials refused and threatened to resign.
So this is actually, I'll just say really fast, what I was talking about earlier, that later on in the hearings, we would get to a point where you do see some people who stood their ground, probably out of fears that they would be making the situation worse by not being there. By leaving, that they would probably have a Trump loyalist on the docket, and that Trump loyalist would do the dastardly thing they know Trump is trying to do now. And by refusing to do that, they're at least buying some time. So that's that theory of this. You're going to hear from like a select few of those group of people, again, the ones who came to come forward here. And so we'll go back to that.
They were willing to sacrifice their careers for the good of our country.
How often did President Trump contact you or the department to push allegations of election fraud?
December 23rd and January 3rd.
Is this Jeffrey Rosen, the former acting attorney general?
Virtually every day, with one or two exceptions like Christmas Day. So there were different things raised at different parts of, or different intervals, with the common theme being his dissatisfaction about what the Justice Department had done to investigate election fraud. I will say that the Justice Department declined all of those requests that I was just referencing because we did not think that they were appropriate based on the facts and the law as we understood them. You also noted that Mr. Rosen said to Mr. Trump, quote, DOJ can't and won't snap its fingers and change the outcome of the election. How did the president respond to that, sir?
He responded very quickly and said, essentially, that's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm just asking you to do is just
Richard
say
Donahue,
corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican Congress.
Another former acting attorney general.
Did the president tell you that he would remove you and Mr. Rosen because you weren't declaring there was election fraud?
He said, people tell me I should just get rid of both of you. I should just remove you and make a change in leadership, put Jeff Clark in, maybe something will finally get.
There we go. There's that.
President
People
said,
are saying.
What do I have to
People
lose?
are saying, I should get rid of you. Maybe. He's
actually
floating it
the
out there
opening
as a
because
threat.
I said, Mr. President, you have a great deal to lose. And I began to explain to him what he had to lose, and what the country had to lose, and what the department had to lose. And this was not in anyone's best interest. That conversation went on for some time. Everyone essentially chimed in with their own thoughts, all of which were consistent about how damaging this would be to the country, to the department, to the administration, to him personally. And at some point, the conversation turned to whether Jeff Clark was even qualified, competent to run the Justice Department, which in my mind, he clearly was not.
Days after the tragic events of January 6th, some of these same Republican members requested pardons in the waning days of the Trump administration.
Were you involved in or did you witness any conversations about the possibility of a blanket pardon for everyone involved in January 6th?
I had heard that mentioned. Yeah.
Do you know whether the president had any conversations about potentially pardoning any family members?
I know he had hinted at a blanket pardon for the January 6th thing.
This is a former Trump aide, White House aide.
He had for all the staff and everyone involved. Not with January 6th, but just before he left office, I know he had talked about that.
The only reason I know to ask for a pardon is because you think you've committed a crime.
that was Kinzinger made the point that I was about to make, is that like blanket pardons is the kind of thing you do when you are a corrupt politician who has the ability to give pardons, and you just did some stuff with your entire team and you need to get them all clear.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just obvious these guys knew they were doing something that was criminal. And it's probably also obvious that they felt like this fool idiot Trump is not even going to be able to help us pull it off, really. Like, yeah, like the one thing he can't do is give us a pardon, though.
They kept at every step of the way. They're just like, dude, you can't do this. Dude, that makes no sense. Dude, you're really dumb. Dude, like you can't. It's like this is not going to work out. And every step of the way, they were just like, we had to explain to him. We had to dumb it down. We had to like make a little system and a process in the chart. We had to play like rapid fire. And ultimately it came to the point where he like backed down, but only barely, or keep going for it anyways. And yeah, like we have a clear, what these January 6th hearings are trying to do is paint a clear path, that a clear tie between Donald Trump, the president of the United States at the time, and inciting a riot that very nearly turned violent to potentially change the state of the election, of what actually happened, of the actual will of the people, the last little shred of democracy that exists in this country.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I was going to say, truly a centuries-long tradition. Like, even after the Civil War, like, things were handed off more peacefully than that was, more or less.
Yeah. And also, I think in the first video, they didn't really talk about the money aspect, but I did want to talk about that, but we'll talk about it when we do this next one with Hutchinson, I think her name is, because it actually, it actually has, what we found out was the money stuff that we heard, I think it was on the first day, had more to do with her actually than anything. So
Interesting. All right, let's go into it.
As an American, I was disgusted. It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie. As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of...
So this is Cassidy Hutchinson. She's a former aide to Mark Meadows. And I do want to paint one more picture of this, like, for the record, as we all do for Power Report, like, for the record. This was a surprise hearing that was called, like, last minute in the midst of all of the stuff around the Supreme Court ruling on effectively striking down Roe v. Wade and people's ability to access reproductive care, abortions, things of that nature. And through all of this, to cut through all the noise, or at least attempt to. And again, blindsiding Republicans, because on Fox News, they're playing this game of, we can't really talk about this because it is really damning and we don't have any kind of like top-down prep for this because we don't have anyone on the inside of these meetings who's feeding us information. And so it's actually getting actively kind of rough for us here. But so we have to say that, it's kind of like the Trump game, or offensively like a Republican Roger Stone game of, obviously this stuff isn't important, but if it was, it's lies. like I'm not paying attention enough, but I know it intricately enough to tell you that they're lying. It's a very fun game that they always play in these situations that is always the tell, really, because it's always how they're really paying attention. They're watching closely because they're like, oh, wow, this brings us back to that time when in the moments that were happening, because there was stuff that I don't even know is mentioned in the hearing or not, where Sean Hannity, like other like major political operatives, like political pundits, essentially, on the right, were texting with the Trump family, just like, yo, can we not? Like, this is where we need to tap the brakes. Like, this is something I have never seen. This is, you are lost in the sauce, and we are at the sriracha factory over here, dog. Like, what is going on?
You know they're paying attention because they're like, hopefully my name doesn't come up today.
Yeah. Oh, man. This is corruption to the highest degree. But yeah, so this was like a bombshell hearing. We shall continue.
Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. I remember...
That's Giuliani.
...him saying, Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th? He had responded something to the effect of, we're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Talk to the chief about it. Talk to the chief about it. He knows about it.
And did you go back then up to the West Wing and tell Mr. Meadows about your conversation with Mr.
Liz Cheney again?
I did. After Mr. Giuliani had left the campus that evening, I went back up to our office and I found Mr. Meadows in his office on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone. I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, I just had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. It sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol. He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, there's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real bad on January 6th.
Of course, the world now knows that the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th had many different types of weapons. When a president speaks, the Secret Service typically requires those attending to pass through metal detectors, known as magnetometers, or MAGs for short. The Select Committee has learned about reports from outside the magnetometers and has obtained police radio transmissions identifying individuals with firearms, including AR-15s, near the ellipse on the morning of January 6th.
There's an individual who's in a tree. He's a white male, about 6 feet tall, thin build.
This is from Metropolitan Police.
He's got blue jeans and a blue jean jacket, and underneath the blue jean jacket, the complainant saw a stock of an AR-15.
You told us, Ms. Hutchinson, about particular comments that you heard while you were in the tent area.
I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Let's turn now to what happened in the president's vehicle when the Secret Service told him he would not be going to the Capitol after his speech. First, here is the president's motorcade leaving the ellipse after his speech on January 6th. Ms. Hutchinson, when you returned to the White House in the motorcade after the president's speech, where did you go?
When I returned to the White House, I walked upstairs towards the Chief of Staff's office, and I noticed Mr. Renato lingering outside of the office. Once we had made eye contact, he quickly waved me to go into his office, which was just across the hall from mine. When I went in, he shut the door, and I noticed Bobby Engel, who is the head of Mr. Trump's security detail, sitting in a chair, just looking somewhat discombobulated and a little lost. I looked at Tony, and he had said, "Did you effing hear what happened in the Beast?" I said, "No, Tony, I just got back." What happened?
Drama alert.
So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, "We're not, we don't have the assets to do it. It's not secure. We're going back to the West Wing." The president had very strong, very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president. Take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Clavicles. I used to have this really awful joke with my dad, who hates flying, but will insist on doing short trips on the Greyhound. And I was a kid, and at the same time as we were taking this one trip, there was a guy who had sliced someone's neck off at the clavicle on a Greyhound bus. And so I would always tell my dad to sleep in the Greyhound position by wrapping his arms around his neck like that. So maybe I'm just going to rename that the Trump position.
That's a good one. I like that.
The Trump technique. Yowza.
That testimony was pretty wild. When I was watching it, I was like, there was a lot of times I responded out loud to myself during these hearings, but I just remember oh damn, whoa, you should try to choke people out and stuff. Willing to crash the car, grabbing the steering wheel. But two things about that. So Hutchinson, she had a lawyer who was who was paid for by Trump's PAC, going back to the money. So they revealed that in the months after the election, Trump lost the election, he raised around $250 million. And I wish I could remember the exact quote, but they said $100 million was within the first week of the election, his election loss. So Trump paid for her, and they also revealed that the $250 million that he raised was for, we're going to figure out election integrity and we're going to do all this, but it just went into a PAC that he created. Hutchinson's lawyer was paid for with the money through this PAC. And this lawyer was advising her not to testify publicly. She had already testified behind closed doors, but she ended up firing that lawyer. She got a different lawyer, and that's why she ended up testifying publicly. So, you can have $250 million and it might not help you. Money can't buy everything.
I will say, the number that I was able to pull up just now was that In the first 6 months of 2021, Trump had more than $100 million in political cash. So that was just like out of funds that he had raised. He said that in the first 6 months that they had raised $82 million in that period, according to the Washington Post. So they were doing numbers, to say the least, running off of this stop the steal kind of thing. They were sending messages thirstier than Nancy Pelosi, essentially, saying, my friend, my Donald Trump's Lord and Savior, please, please, please send money so you can save the country from this lying, stealing Democrats.
What they were also doing, which this came out, was when people would donate, they would make it a recurring donation, and they wouldn't know. So they were having to pay back people who didn't know that they were giving. Like somebody gives $30, then it becomes a recurring donation, and they're like, "Wait, where's all my money going?" They were, scamming their people. One, by raising money off a lie that they knew was a lie. Also, the money's not going to where they say it's going, and also pushing recurring payments on them without them knowing also.
But Democrats do that too, so that's why you got to be really careful when you hit the Mac Blues.
Well, anybody doing that's messed up. Like, who cares? Like, they're all bad.
Yeah, no. That's not to negate what you're saying at all. That's just like these. Trump is the scummiest of the scummy of politicians, but a lot of times he's running the political playbook because he found out that politics is, the way he does it, the best grift of them all.
Yeah.
Running for president. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the different like fake presidential runs that celebrities, failed comedians, all these other different people have like done for office, and they are. It's all usually a net positive because you raise your awareness. It's a big publicity stunt. You can kind of say whatever you want to build your audience, and you can be kind of a populist. You can flirt with it. There's kind of no stakes because, yeah, there'll eventually be an article about how, oh, it's impossible for him to get on the ballot in all 50 states. Oh, it's too late. Oh, this is what you have to do. Oh, we couldn't make this kind of party, that kind of party, or whatever. But Trump realized, okay, there's a way I can do this, and I could be shiesty about it. And what you see throughout this entire thing, I think the big takeaway through this is that Donald Trump operates off of pushing the boundary and pushing the line. And in his business ventures, as was covered very thoroughly throughout all different sorts of media outlets throughout the Trump years, he has not really thought about the rules, not really cared about the rules, actively pushed against the rules to see who would challenge him, who he could put in the right place, who he could legally push and intimidate to make sure that whatever he said would ultimately happen and like come through. It was supposedly, from some analyses, tactics he had learned from his father, Fred Trump, right? So this is the way he behaved. He took that to politics, and he did that for 4 years. And the last remaining hope that the country had against that, which is the ballot box, truly for president, spoke. And Trump said from the offset that he wasn't going to take that seriously. And a significant number of his supporters believed him. Now, in the early days, there were a lot of like mainstream Republicans who said, oh, wow, this is, damn, that's brazy, right? They were actually really surprised that this was happening. And you saw, Republicans kind of stumble. I think Tucker Carlson that night or a couple of nights later said that, oh, this was clearly Antifa. That was all this stuff. All the stuff that's going on is overblown by Democrats. It's slowly kind of evolved to where they did the tactic that Republicans have done all of Trump's administration, which is wherever Trump leads, wherever Trump pushes, push along with him and allow that to be the Republican mainstream. And so that almost got us so far off the ledge that we lost the country. We lost the one thing that gives people power, the Democratic vote for a president to some extent, right? And that power is very limited, but that power at this point, voting is harm reduction. It is one of many political efforts that a person needs to do in order to participate in a healthy political system, especially as a person on the left.
For sure.
And I think I'm like winding down here, but the point of this is that we became very close to losing all of that. And a significant part of the country doesn't care because a very, very small, wealthy elite part of the country that pretends to be populists are saying that, hey, we have a good thing going here if we all just stick to the script and get Trump or a Trump-like person in power, erode the state legislatures. We have the Supreme Court. We'll get the legislature branch. We'll get the executive branch. And then we'll hold that power for as long as possible because we have this game where there's no way that people can work it out. And it's going to destroy people's lives. Sorry, that was a long diatribe, but like that's to me was my takeaway from all the hearings.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Like I wrote down that from the day of the election, I think it was November 3rd, up until January 6th, that was probably the biggest test of American democracy in American history. Maybe, the Bush-Gore was a big test for American democracy because Gore did win Florida. But, the recounts of everything that happened with that, like, that was a big test for American democracy. But this one was probably, in my opinion, the biggest test of American democracy. You had an autocratic leader who tried everything he could, pushed the boundaries, had all kinds of secret meetings, and there's people flying all over the country trying to figure out how they're going to do this, and it didn't work. And, I'm not out here calling Pence and whoever else heroes for that, but I'm glad they did their job the way that anybody else is supposed to do their job. It's been bad for quote unquote Trump world through these hearings. We've seen that there's people making, threats through text messages and phone calls to people that are going to be testifying. And this is the first time Trump, like I think you said, like he's known for just pushing the rules, pushing the boundaries. This is probably the first time in his life he's being held accountable for anything. And he's been pretty quiet. Like he's been talking a bit, but I saw him saying that the Hutchinson woman was lying and that she's basically, clout chasing or whatever. But it's probably the first time in his life he's being held accountable in a real way. I do hope it leads to something significant. Although, and I don't know if, what you might think about this, I do think that it could be bad if they try to arrest him just because of the cult of personality he has, like just like the cult and the violent people he has that support him. I don't know. Like I'm scared for that. I'll say that much. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, the optics of that would be, because this is the country where like, oh, Biden raised the gas prices. People actually think that like, that's like, America is a capitalist country and works on supply and demand, and the government doesn't control the prices because we're not a communist country until it's gas. It's just very interesting. It's very interesting how that works for the Republican Party especially. But I also love that one star from Breaking Bad who said, hey, if you love capitalism so much, stop complaining about rising gas prices. Supply and demand, damn it.
Honestly, I was like thinking the same thing. Like, I don't want to hear some Republican or some, just into capitalism person complaining about the gas prices. They're hiking up the gas prices and you're going to pay for them. So what are you complaining about? You would do it too if you were Exxon CEO.
Yeah, you love rolling coal. You love your big ass Cummins truck, right? Like this is like put up or shut up. All right, like America, love it or leave it. Okay.
Pretty much. But I was also going to say too. I don't like when she talked about Trump grabbing the steering wheel and trying to choke homeboy out and all that other stuff. That stuff could end up going well. Like that bad behavior could look good for Trump in an election run. Like. He can play off that a lot, even though he said that she's lying. If he admits that he did that, like, yeah, they stole the election. What would you do? You would choke your grandma out if they stole the election from you.
I wanted to see my people, my beautiful people were out there. And he was a traitor. He was a traitor like Mike Pence. Like, they were saying to hang Mike Pence, and I don't say to do that because I don't endorse violence. But this person was disobeying me as the president, and I had to take it upon myself, like George Washington, to be the person who is both in charge and acts as the leader and acts as a fighter.
And they also said that it's only like 2 miles away. Like, it's not even that far away. Like, you could just walk there, but like, he was never going to do that.
Absolutely not. So like I promised, and it's amazing that I remember this. I'm getting better at hosting now. Do you think, you got to this a little bit, alluded to this just now, but do you think that this will be a turning point for Trump's overall power in the Republican Party? Because so these hearings are not over. They're going to be even more after this sort of like July 4th when we're recording this 2022. And there's a lot at stake, especially coming up to these midterm elections when Joe Biden doesn't have a lot to offer to people. And yeah, people do think that the president raised the gas prices, unless it's Trump. And so to the point of, okay, well, one aspect of gas going up is the fact that there are limits on how much gas America can produce, even though America has over the past 20 years become increasingly worked towards energy independence, so to speak, by increasing how much drilling they do for oil and natural gas. But Biden is now, and even so-called progressive Democrats like Gavin Newsom, we're opening up permits for drilling and all these other natural gas and oil things that cause climate change, and rising gas prices and other external factors like the supply shock of gas that's happening, OPEC and Russia doing all of their own little things to manipulate the price of oil and restrict the price of oil through trade and things like that. Like, those are things that are way above the president, and these are all things that are going to piss people off, and this is what Joe Biden is coming against in the Democratic Party more generally in 2022. And these are like off years after a presidential election win where you get Congress and the Senate. It's just a very historical thing where usually the party that achieves that semi-trifecta, even at the slim majority that the Democrats have with Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, etc., they usually lose that every 2 years. Pack in the political climate that's happening right now and the economic climate that's happening right now, it's not looking great for the Democrats. But do you think that in the short term or even in the long term, that this could be a turning point for the few Republicans out there who have doubts about Donald Trump, who think that, oh no, this could be something serious? Because I'll be honest, just not just like drop something on you really fast, but like, I don't see how this isn't just like late 1920s, 1930s America, or sorry, 1920s, 1930s Germany, without a little bit more of an awakening on the Republican non-voting, generally white side, that this is a historic humanity extinction level crisis, essentially. And I only say that because, again, I'll end it here because, okay, Trump or DeSantis becomes president again. In a time where China may want to go to war with the U.S. over stuff in the South China Sea, and Russia might want to go to war with the U.S. over any other reason, and we've already pissed off pretty much every other country that really wants to harm us economically or whatever, and we're going into this like difficult time where everyone is just getting more and more and more and more armed internally in the country. What do we have left?
Well, I think
my question is, will this matter for Trump?
Matter for Trump, yeah. Obviously, it's hard to say, but Trump has raised a lot of money. Obviously, we've seen that. I feel like there could be a part of him that doesn't want to run if he feels like the consequences won't be that serious from this. If he feels like there could be some consequences, the best way to get around that is just become the president. But or at least try. And he has a shot if he runs for sure. I don't know any like Republican people like that. Like I don't know like what those people feel about what's going on with these hearings. I don't know if they even care. Obviously we've had this abortion ruling. Like I don't know like what those people. I don't know how much they care about that stuff.
Well, like, I, not to cut you off, but like I think that if we go by a general status quo trend, it's something that's out there that Democrats can use to message on, but they won't. Yeah. I think
which thing won't they message on? The hearings or
the result of the hearings, the conclusions from the hearings that one can make to attack Republicans on and attack Donald Trump on. Because what we've been saying in this entire like super classic extendo version of Power Report that we almost like dreamed of doing essentially more or less. It's just like that the Republican Party went like in lockstep with what Donald Trump did, as they knew that he was a loose cannon, as they knew that he was going to try like breaking laws and stuff like that. They were like, all right, cool. We're down for it. Let's do it. I'm cool with this. All right. And that's an indictment on the entire party based on how extreme this almost got. And if Democrats message that as, okay, they're going to such extreme lengths to take over the Supreme Court, to get total power of the government. This is something that hasn't happened in 200, 300 years, where this area of country, they can get all nationalistic and jingoistic, like, and of course they will because they're Democrats and they don't understand the consequences of their actions. But they're saying like, we will be ruled by a one-party system on all sides that is trying to entrench itself at a local level, at a state level, and at a national level. Are we okay with that as a country? Democrats are willing to just change things to make things just better for you. Just cut, like, not just make a space, because the thing that Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, the angle that they think they're trying to play is we're going to be the moderate Democrats who at that moment say, look, we're going to create a space where you can be a conservative easily and still be a part of the quote unquote sane party. But I'm saying I don't think people really care. Most people are checked out of politics. Be the Democrats and walk and chew gum at the same time, saying the Republicans are a cataclysmic event waiting to happen that's already happening. And the Democratic Party will now, if they were smart, listen to me, which I'm not going to do, of course, are now going to fight tooth and nail against this tyrannical state to rebalance things a little bit. Because in reality, if Democrats do whatever they want, if Democrats somehow convince people that they will actually fight for them this time and not just fundraise when things go bad and completely roll over and say, oh, there's a parliamentarian, oh, there's like this Senate process over here, we just like can't work through whatever, it's like can't do a basic thing. Like, if they actually start working for people, they're only getting power back. They're not going to tip the scales again. We're like, okay, Democrats have unilateral power again. They're only going to claw a little bit of power back. This is still going to be a right-wing country with right-wing power entrenched in every step of the way possible. This is just to claw power back by doing things like court packing or doing things like, like that's just like a base thing you could do, or like the stuff with the abortion access, where you make centers accessible on federal lands or on military bases, things like that. Like, there's presidential overreaches that Donald Trump was able to do that the Republican Party went through and are willing to go through for absolute evil and terror and to take away people's rights. Do the same thing or attempt to do the same thing to get people's rights back. And then once people's like, I don't want to like Jimmy Dore this and predict something like ridiculous that's happening that like won't happen, but I feel like that is going to, or like that would shift people in such a way where they would see like, okay, these are the actual things being fought for here. Where do I actually stand? By people, I mean like regular voters, regular citizens. Like the stakes are just like, will be higher in that case because there'll actually be a fight going on politically.
Yes. Well, okay, going back a little bit, like what we saw with Trump was that there wasn't really a Republican Party. It was just Trump and everybody that he endorsed or everybody that was loyal to him. So I think what's going to have to happen is like Ron DeSantis is ideologically similar to Trump. I don't know if he has the same autocratic tendencies or if he could have that cult around him like Trump could. I doubt it. I don't think so. So I'm not as afraid of a Ron DeSantis presidency as I am a Trump presidency, especially in Trump's second term. But will this have consequences for Trump? If anything, you know, in a court, like if he has to go and like testify to some extent, I think he can talk his way, like the lawyers and everything, they can talk him out. They can talk his way out of saying like, I incited this situation. You know, I think most intelligent people could talk their way out of what we've seen. What might end up being the thing that trips him up is the money. Because if there's one thing America don't play with, like if they start digging into that money stuff, like you can get in trouble. Obviously, he has a lot of financial stuff that he's done illegally, probably. There's, you know, that case in New York, and I guess he did have to do a deposition or something like that. I kind of can't remember. But the money might be the thing that trips him up and make it so he can't run. The only thing I care about is if he doesn't run for president. Because if he does, the Republican voters are going to vote for him. They're going to come out harder for him than they will for DeSantis. So if there's anything that can happen that can make him not run, I will be satisfied. I don't necessarily need to see him in handcuffs because I just don't know what that's going to mean. It's tough in a democracy when you start arresting former presidents. It's just tough. And he does have a lot of violent people that support him. And, you know, we're not trying to see anybody have to die for that stuff. Or any more people, I'll say that. I think the money could trip him up, but what we've heard so far in the hearings, I think that he, with the help of the lawyers, could weasel his way out of any culpability.
Well, I think that's the thing here is that there are lawyers and then there are lawmakers, right? Yeah. And maybe that final push, I don't know, that's the last thing. Like there's precedent that could be set here. And like I said, the ante has been upped. So you could either put up or shut up, all right? So like fight or not. I don't know if I don't know if the scope is going to go towards the financial things. I think they're going to try to keep it towards this is an unprecedented situation to where, to your point, Bam, if we say that, okay, all this stuff happened and we're not going to punish this, we're barely going to acknowledge it, we're not going to set the precedent that this kind of thing is bad and we don't want presidents to do this, then what's to stop a Democrat from doing this? What's to stop the next Republicans from doing this? Which one of the two is going to be more likely to do this again?
Well, I think that I do think that people are going to bring it up. Like if Trump has to go on a debate stage, they're going to talk about it. Like it's going to be a big deal if he has to, like anybody who's in opposition to him is going to bring this stuff up for sure. But it's not going to matter if he's on the Republican ticket. He's going to get hella votes. He's going to get more support than Ron DeSantis would or Tom Cotton or whoever. He built a cult around him, like, and in a way that no other president has. So, you know, I just don't want him to run. Like, because if he runs, it's tough. He has a cult of personality that nobody has. It's not about policy or anything. It's just, he's a God savior man for these people. They don't care about the politics. Like they're not going to care about everything they're hearing. Well, actually, let me take that back. Hopefully they care. Hopefully there is a sane Republican voter base that says, no, hopefully there's a voter base that's like Rusty Bowers. For me, their politics are the worst. They're probably racist and all kinds of shit, but they don't want a dictatorship. But for sure, there's a lot of voters. There's a lot of people that are going to show up and vote who would be totally fine with Trump as the king. They support that. So the best thing that could happen is that he's not able to run. And I don't know if like everything that we've heard would be able to do that other than the money. That's the only thing I don't know about. I feel like I could talk my way out of that other stuff. I watched the Saddam Hussein trial. Saddam Hussein, when he was talking, I'm like, he's not guilty, but they hung him anyway. So that's the only thing I don't know about.
When you say the money, are you talking about the money that has to do with January 6th?
Like the money that he raised and it's like not being used for what he said it's been using. Like they're talking about he's paying for lawyers. So I don't know like how much that's been investigated, but $250 million, that's a lot of money. And to say that we're raising this money for election integrity and that they're finding out that this money is being used to pay for these different lawyers and stuff, maybe you could say, yeah, that's the election integrity. But if I know anything, like there's a lot of corrupt, shady, greedy ass people that are around Trump, including himself, and they could be committing crimes with that money. There's already the stuff in New York State with what is her name, Letitia James, digging all in his pockets and his family. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I'm sure it's going to be a long process, but the one thing I don't know about is this $250 million. Everything else, I feel like he can weasel his way out of it.
Yeah. I would love for there to be a money thing, but that's why I think you're right. He could weasel his way out of it. That's why the precedent needs to be set that as a president, you can't be this involved in an attempt to overthrow an election because otherwise it's just going to happen again. And that they're going to, if they didn't achieve the first time, they're going to get better the second time. And if they don't achieve the second time and they don't get punished the second time, then it's, again, refugee situation in this country. With the backdrop of all these different like Cold War situations that we have across the world right now. So fun stuff, good times. Spent a lot of time talking on that, but I think it was comprehensive and very good. Yeah, I think that's kind of the speed run because these hearings were like 6 hours a day, 3 hours a day sometimes. So
some of them were kind of long. I don't think any reached 6 hours, but there were a couple hours, yeah.
All right. So yeah, I think getting 6 days in an hour 45 or so, hour 50, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Bam, where can people find you other than on the Power Reports?
Don't even look for me. I'm anonymous. Don't even. Actually, we made a podcast. We did do a couple of special episodes recently. American gun violence and abortion saves lives. If you're not into soccer, every once in a while we talk about what's going on in the world. But that's wemadeitpodcast.com. But other than that, just leave me alone.
Yeah. There's that story of the 10-year-old girl in Atlanta not Atlanta, I want to say in Indiana, who needed an abortion because she's 4 weeks pregnant, a 10-year-old girl. Okay. And it's I don't know if it's Indiana, but it's like one of those states where she had to travel to another state in order to get that care because she's a 10-year-old girl. And in this country, they now want to make it to where that baby's carried to term because, that baby could solve cancer.
Don't let these people on the right who are anti-abortion say that word groomer anymore. Like most of those states don't even have an exception for rape or incest. So you're telling me you support incest babies Do not let them say the word groomer anymore. If they support that, they support incest babies, you're the groomer.
Not only do they support incest babies, but they're saying, no, carry that baby to term so that one day it can be forced to carry an incest baby to term.
Yeah, we'll have I was going to say something crazy. Let me relax.
Yeah, no, but it's dark. But like, screw their lives after the fact, after they're born. We don't care. But, regardless of the circumstances, it's so ridiculous. Like, anyways, check out the We Made It podcast episodes on both the No Nut World Cup later this year and on the political stuff they do on We Made It podcast and also on Power Report that we'll be doing more of. I guess this is a good time to just tease a little bit. Power Report Live leading up to the election. That'll be a thing.
Okay.
I think we're ready. I think we can do an episode where we don't. I think if Caesar helps co-produce, we can do an episode where we don't get banned from anything.
Dan, look, you're the problem, dude. You are too extra. You are too turned up. So we're gonna get the stream shut down while we're doing it.
No. We have to do entertainment value here. All right, we have to just have fun here. We have to make it entertaining. This is supposed to be like a in-depth political sort of thing that you would do at a barbershop. You know, it's typical things you do.
You do like death threats though. So no, I'm joking.
That's not necessarily provable. Do not follow me on Twitter, Dan from the Web, and look at my Twitter header. That has anything to do with Elon Musk. That's all Minecraft related. Anyways, you can maybe find links to Bam and stuff he does in the podcast description, the YouTube description. Thank you, Peter at Dead Music Productions, for mastering this episode, making it sound nice. And thank you to everyone at the Syndicate 23 team for helping to get this episode up and published. We will be back soon with more episodes, which is usually my bit of gaslighting that I do. But no, we're leading up to an election. And there's a lot of stuff to cover here. There's a lot of mess to cover here. Almost more than you can keep track of, and it's all very substantive now because that's the time of news we're in. Anyways, thank you for joining me, Bam, and thank you for listening, audience. Bye. The people who are listening to the podcast don't know that you're piecing. You have to do something, sir.
They can feel it in the universe.